Welcome to the motherfucking relay. We're covering today's top boxing news.
Okay, we'll start with this. You will have heard earlier today that it is official. Natasha Jonas will be defending her IBF welterweight title against former unified super featherweight champion Mikaela Mayer. We talked about this fight a week ago, and we've known about it for some time. And I made the suggestion a long while ago that Mikaela Mayer, being a top-ranked fighter and top-ranked having that relationship with Sky Sports across the pond and boxer, that would make this fight viable. And here we are. You will notice on the fight poster that there are no peacock logos or peacock insignias. Don't you remember a few weeks back, the people at Boxer announced they were jumping into bed with Peacock, NBC's streaming platform here in America, and Peacock would be showing Boxer shows moving forward, though I don't think they're going to be showing this one as it involves a top-ranked fighter and ESPN fighter. So here in America, I think the fight will be shown on ESPN. I imagine that Peacock will be carrying the Chris Billum-Smith versus Matthias Masternak fight, set to go down later on this year because it doesn't feature any ESPN fighters. It's just Boxer fighters on that show. I think the same will apply for the newly rescheduled Dan Aziz versus Joshua Buatsi fight. I think they'll show that fight, but they're not going to show this one. Not Jonas versus Mayer. Natasha Jonas, who sports a professional record of 14 wins with 2 losses, 1 draw, 9 knockouts, having been knocked out at least once in 17 professional bouts. Many years ago, towards the beginning of her career at the hands of Brazil's own Vivian Obanov. To Mikaela Mayer's 19 wins with 1 loss, just 1 loss, no draws, 5 knockouts, having never been knocked out in 20 professional bouts. Mikaela Mayer is 6 years younger than the reigning champion, 6 years younger than Natasha Jonas, noticeably taller and longer, somewhat faster too. I would give the edge in speed to Mikaela Mayer, with the edge in power going to Natasha. Natasha will have home field advantage as the fight is set to go down in her native Liverpool, so not only will she have home field advantage, but she is also the house fighter. This is a Boxer show. And what is an uphill battle for Mikaela, she cannot afford for this fight to be nip and tuck. It's got to be decisive. Natasha Jonas last saw action in July of this year opposite the ring Candy Wyatt for what was the vacant IBF title. It's the only fight that she had this year. She was a lot busier last year, having fought 3 times. Last year was a big year for Natasha Jonas, whereas this year looks like she took her foot off the gas a bit. Mikaela Mayer, she was slightly more active this year, having boxed 2 times. The Lucy Wildheart fight back in April and the Sylvia Bortot fight in September. And as stated, Mikaela Mayer's got a few things working for her, that she is the taller, longer fighter, the younger fighter, and the somewhat faster fighter. I also happen to think she's a bit more fluid mid-range to inside than Natasha Jonas is. Mikaela's hooks are more compact, tight. Saw that in the Mai Bahamadouche fight, the Jennifer Hahn fight, when she wants to. Mikaela Mayer is quite capable mid-range to inside, more so I think than Natasha, but Natasha Jonas is noticeably stronger. She packs a heavier punch. Natasha's a southpaw, Mikaela is an orthodox fighter. I think she's got a better engine than Natasha too. Better cardio. In the Mai Bahamadouche fight, which I just mentioned, we saw that Mikaela Mayer can throw punches in bunches from the opening round to the final round, that if the situation calls for it, she can fight at a feverish pace. And at 39 years old, I don't know that Natasha can keep up with her, that she may be strong at the start but fade towards the finish. And don't misunderstand me, because I fucking love Natasha Jonas. I've been a fan of her for years, but I am leaning a little bit towards Mikaela Mayer. I am more of a fan of Natasha than I am Mikaela, but looking at what Mikaela brings to the table, that she's younger, she's bigger, she's longer, she's better on the outside and fully capable of boxing on the inside, that her hooks are tighter and her cardio is better. I think one of the only deficiencies, one of the only drawbacks that Mikaela has is at times in the pocket, she can be a little bit heavy on her feet. Yeah, sometimes, but it's negligible. Slight edge to the challenger, slight edge to Mikaela, and we'll talk more about the fight as the fight date approaches.
What did you think of his fight with Francis Ngannou, and did you think that he won the fight? Я думаю, що Тайсон Ф'юрі не дуже серйозно віднісся до Френсіса Нганну, і ми побачили все, що відбулося. Він буде інший зі мною в рингу. Я впевнений в цьому.
This is the most difficult fight of your career?
Какой, з Тайсоном Ф'юрі? No. Звісно ж, ні. Що ви таке говорите? В мене ще не було важких поєдинків в моїй кар'єрі. Tyson, see you, my love, friend.
You will recall that the fight between Alexander Usyk and Tyson Fury was supposed to be on schedule for December 23rd. That changed into a potential Francis Ngannou ring return to the card that everyone's talking about now, the one where both Anthony Joshua and Deontay Wilder will be fighting in separate bouts. And the fight between Fury and Usyk, that's supposed to go down early next year in February.
On the heels of Tyson Fury's piss-poor showing with a novice, Usyk says he doesn't think Fury took the bout seriously, whereas Fury himself said...
Fury said he did. Fury said, you can't take anything away from Ngannou. He's a good fighter and he gave me a very good fight. I trained very well and don't have any excuses. It's boxing. Some days you have good days, some days you don't. I tend to lean towards what Usyk is saying more than Fury. You can't take Fury at his word. When Usyk says he doesn't think Fury took the fight seriously, yeah, I don't think he took it seriously either. That's why he decided to box a novice, an MMA fighter, in the first place, because he wanted a layup. He wanted an easy one, and that's what he was anticipating, an easy fight.
And he got more than he bargained for.
Though for me, it's not just Fury getting more than he bargained for, it's also the gross overestimation people have about him, that he's the greatest heavyweight of this era or the greatest heavyweight of all times.
No, he isn't. Though I agree with Usyk's contention, he didn't take that Ngannou fight seriously. That's how Usyk feels about it, and that's how all-time great Hall of Famer Lennox Lewis felt about it.
Immediately after the fight, Lennox stated, "Let's talk about last night. I think both Fury and Ngannou surprised everyone, but for two different reasons. Fury looked nothing like the man in the trilogy against Deontay Wilder. Ngannou by far exceeded most people's expectations. Basically, Ngannou won the night, but Fury won the fight."
Do you see how he brings up Deontay Wilder?
And what am I always telling you? That all this hyperbole in association with Tyson Fury and his boxing acumen, his ability, and who he is in this era, it's all predicated on how he looked with Wilder, the Wilder fights.
That people read far too much into that trilogy and read far too much into how Fury looked with Wilder.
Lennox continued, "I thought Fury won a fight, but then again, I'm also of the contingency that you have to take the title from the champion. Aside from the knockdown, Ngannou just looked a counter all night. Call me old school, but that's just not enough in my book unless you stop him."
Lennox Lewis, an all-time great, one of the finest boxers Britain ever produced. He retired with 2 losses on his record, 2 losses that he avenged.
I do not believe that Tyson Fury is a better heavyweight, a better champion, and a better fighter than Lennox Lewis. And by all rights, there should already be a loss in Tyson Fury's record. The loss he should have suffered to John McDermott. And what some people think is a loss to Francis Ngannou, a novice, an MMA fighter in his pro debut.
But if those losses that should be in the column were in the column, would we be hearing that Tyson Fury is this era's greatest heavyweight? Would we be hearing that he's the greatest heavyweight of all times? It's Anthony Joshua's losses that they hold against him.
That's what they count against him, his losses. So if Tyson Fury's controversial win over John McDermott years ago were scored in favor of John instead of Tyson, what would people be saying here today? Lennox Lewis continued, "That said, Fury looked lackluster and didn't go to the body all night. As the king of boxing, you can't let MMA come into your house and have a good showing against you in his very first boxing match. It should have been a boxing clinic, and it wasn't. A part of the reason it wasn't. It's not just that Tyson Fury didn't take the assignment seriously, that he didn't take Francis Ngannou seriously. It's not just that, though it's a part of it. It's also, he's not as good as you guys think he is."
Did you catch what Lennox called the guy? He called the guy the king of boxing. There's another champion at this weight, an unbeaten one, a unified champion. But Fury is the king of boxing.
Just by looking at those love handles, I thought to myself, no way Fury had a full camp. I'm thinking he maybe got in 4 to 6 weeks. This definitely wasn't the same Fury who beat Wilder.
And there's that token Wilder reference again. You see, after Tyson Fury beat Vladimir Klitschko for 3 of the 4 alphabet titles at this weight, behind that performance, nobody was saying, and nobody thought, that Tyson Fury was the best heavyweight of all times, or even the best heavyweight of the era, not based on that performance.
In fact, immediately after the fight, all people could talk about was how far the heavyweight division had fallen in terms of talent and how awful that fight was to watch, whereas the Wilder fight was a bit more entertaining and a bit more dramatic, a bit more back and forth. Thus, most of what people think about Tyson Fury and his boxing acumen is based on how he looked against a one-handed fighter, a one-trick pony.
Guy with 2 left feet. No coordination, no cardio, next to no jab, relying heavily on the big right hand. The big straight right hand.
You overestimate him. You overestimate Fury, and in effect, you overestimate Wilder.
Who didn't beat AJ, he didn't beat Usyk, he didn't beat Ruiz, so why would Fury beating him make him the best? Near as I can tell, that handle is still up for grabs. The best heavyweight of this era will be decided when Fury fights Usyk.
Then we'll know, because for me, you guys gave it away too easily. You were too quick to give it away to Fury for beating Wilder, who didn't fight very many, if any, of his contemporaries, save Fury, who beat him.
We've been locked in this proverbial circle jerk for 5 fucking years.
Is it too much to ask that the 2 remaining champions at this weight fight each other before you make that determination?
Before you crown Fury the best of this era, let him go out there and prove it.
And finally, as it pertains to the big heavyweight showdown set to go down December 23rd in Saudi Arabia, it appears Anthony Joshua is going to work with Ben Davison for the Otto Wallin fight. He is expected to return to Derek James long term, but will train with former Tyson Fury coach Ben Davison for his December 23rd fight with Otto Wallin. What might have coaxed this move is that Derek James actually has a full plate. He's got a lot of fighters. Errol Spence Jr., Jermel Charlo, Frank Martin, Ryan Garcia, who's going to be boxing very soon, rebounding off the loss to Gervonta Davis. We already knew that Anthony Joshua, at least intermittently, has been working with Ben Davison whenever he's in the UK. And what's likely coaxing this move is that Derek is busy. He's got to tend to some of his other fighters that have fights coming up. So Ben
is the substitute.
Though it still feels like a rehearsal of sorts, that if Anthony ends up looking better with Ben in his corner than he did with Derek, Ben might take the job full time.
In this upcoming Otto Wallin fight, what is a prelude to what's said to be two Deontay Wilder fights. The plan is understood to be 3 fights for AJ and Wilder with the Saudis. They will both fight on December 23rd, and if they win, they are set to face each other twice in Saudi Arabia next year.
They've both got to take care of business, and some are already making the argument that if Deontay Wilder were to win his upcoming fight with former WBO champion Joseph Parker, that would be the best win of his career. Better than the Bermane-Stiverne win.
Or at least on par. Bermane-Stiverne, who Wilder beat for the WBC title, he wasn't champion very long. He won the vacant title, then lost it in his very next fight.
Whereas Joseph, even if he's not a champion now, he was a champion a while longer, racked up several successful title defenses before eventually losing the title to Anthony Joshua. Anthony, who's going to be facing Otto Wallin.
If Anthony were to beat Otto would be a solid win for Anthony, but hardly the most solid win of his career.
He's been consistently facing fighters ranked in the top 10 of the division, not just the top 10 of some alphabet organization, but top 10 at the weight consistently since what? 2016, 2017?
Some intrinsic value to an Otto Wallin fight that perhaps some other fights didn't have. Otto Wallin fought Tyson Fury, as we all know, and Tyson Fury, he couldn't stop him. He couldn't knock him out. So if Anthony Joshua were to, if he does...
So much for the gun-shy narrative, the gun-shy theory. How could he be gun-shy if he stops a guy who's never been stopped, if he stops a guy who Tyson Fury couldn't stop? And it's not like Otto Wallin started losing every fight immediately after the Fury fight. He's racked up a string of victories, not a string of losses.
Veteran boxing scribe Dan Raphael says that this is a Queensberry show, but there are fighters from a multitude of promoters boxing on the show, which begs the question, then who's the lead promoter? So many matchroom fighters like Jai Opataya and Filip Hrgovic.
Dmitry Bivol. According to that same Dan Raphael, Anthony Joshua is the headliner. In his own words, it makes sense because he's the biggest star on the show. So if Matchroom is bringing most of the star power, most of the bodies, then what did the Saudis need Frank for? What did they need from him?
Daniel Dubois, I guess that the only way that Frank Warren can promote a successful heavyweight card is if he uses Matchroom's fighters.
It's a very strange arrangement, to say the least, because Anthony Joshua's fights and the rights to them are supposed to be exclusive to the DAZN platform and the Matchroom banner. But this is said to be a Queensberry promotion show. So how does that work out? And I don't know. Maybe Matchroom and DAZN are sharing the distribution rights to the show with TNT, to where multiple platforms will distribute the pay-per-view.
With Frank Warren at the helm of promotion, I don't understand. If the Saudis needed this many of Matchroom's fighters, then what did they need Frank for?
Well, I'm just bouncing ideas around. I'm just guessing. But the Saudis were likely expecting much better numbers from Fury versus Ngannou than what they got. By now we all know that pay-per-view bombed. It bombed big time. So maybe when it did, the Saudis decided, let's call up Eddie and let's see if we can use some of his guys.
But then what do they need Frank for?
I'm really not sure at this point, and what, if any, involvement he's going to have in what is supposed to be Joshua versus Wilder 1 and 2 next year. In that situation, what do you need with Queensberry?
What do you need from Queensberry? Neither one of those guys are Queensberry Promotions fighters.
Bipartisanship in the sport of boxing is welcomed. I'm not against it. Though looking at the arrangement of the card, how many Matchroom fighters are on it, and looking at this arrangement overall, it is peculiar, because if you were going to need this much from Matchroom, then what did you need Frank for?
I suppose we'll get those answers and more on Thursday during the official kickoff press conference.